Good morning and thanks for joining us on this Friday, July 13th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min, and these are the stories we're following at this hour. A flattering letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to U.S. President Donald Trump, despite concerns the North is taking little action towards surrendering his nuclear weapons. Trump again boasting that it's a sign of great progress being made. President MoonJae-in in Singapore says the summit between Pyongyang and Washington was a success, but adds it'll take time. The South Korean leader wraps up his trip to the city-state today. South Korea's 20th National Assembly is shaping up after weeks of a leadership vacuum. Lawmakers are picking their parliamentary leadership positions today at an extraordinary session, and we have our correspondent covering it on the ground. Our starting point this morning, U.S. President Donald Trump shares a flattering letter he received from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Twitter. Now, the letter comes despite concerns that Kim is taking little action towards surrendering his nuclear weapons programs. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
President Trump revealed a letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un via Twitter on Thursday, with a message that read, "A very nice note from Chairman Kim of North Korea," with Trump adding that great progress is being made. Along with the message were two images of the letter, one in Korean and the other in English. Dated July 6th, the note was likely the one given to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo during his visit to Pyongyang last week. In the letter, the North Korean leader expresses deep appreciation for the extraordinary efforts made by President Trump for the improved bilateral relations between the two countries and the faithful implementation of the joint statement, referring to the agreement signed by the two leaders at their summit in Singapore last month. Kim added that with the strong will, sincere efforts, and unique approach by the two leaders, a new future will happen, expressing optimism for the two countries and their relations. Meanwhile, attending the annual NATO Summit in Brussels on Thursday, both President Trump and Pompeo expressed their confidence in the diplomatic process with the North. Pompeo said his counterpart Kim Jong-un made a commitment, adding that North Korea intends to denuclearize. But the big question remains on when the complete denuclearization will actually begin, as the two countries continue to discuss ways to make their commitments in their Singapore agreement a reality. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
But at the border village of Panmunjom on Thursday, the North Koreans were a no-show for their scheduled working-level talks with U.S. officials on the repatriation of American troops sacrificed in the North during the Korean War. Now, the rescheduled date this Sunday, July 15th. Our Park Hee-jun tells us more.
Officials from North Korea were expected to meet Thursday with UN command officials representing the United States to discuss repatriating the remains of American troops who went missing in action during the Korean War. Returning the remains was something North Korean leader Kim Jong-un promised to do when he met last month with U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore. Talks on implementing the agreement were due to be held on Thursday at the truce village of Panmunjom, as agreed last week in Pyongyang by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and senior North Korean official Kim Yong-chol. The U.S. had already sent 100 wooden caskets to Panmunjom to carry the soldiers' remains back home once an agreement was reached. But North Korean officials never showed up. The agreement to return them was considered a huge step forward in building trust between Pyongyang and Washington. It's unclear why the North Korean officials were not present. However, according to the U.S. State Department, the North contacted the U.S. side, offering to hold the talks on Sunday instead. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said the U.S. will be ready. Seoul-based Yonhap news agency, citing government sources, also reported that Pyongyang proposed holding them at the general level, strongly hinting that the North wants a senior U.S. military official present at the negotiations. It's not yet known who will participate from the U.S. side. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
The United States is asking the UN Security Council to order an immediate halt of all refined oil products delivered to North Korea after finding out that Pyongyang had violated restrictions on the imports. According to a confidential U.S. report sent to a UN sanctions committee, it is estimated that nearly 760,000 barrels of oil products had been delivered to North Korea between January 1st to May 30th of this year. Now, that numbers are well above the annual quota set at 500,000 barrels. Under the sanctions resolution adopted back in December, crude supplies to North Korea are also capped at 4 million barrels a year. President MoonJae-in says North Korea-U.S. denuclearization talks, although it may take time, are on the right track. He made the remarks during his bilateral summits with the President and Prime Minister of Singapore on day 2 of his 3-day state visit there. Our MoonJae-in traveling with the President files this report.
Despite possible obstacles down the road, North Korea-U.S. negotiations are on the right track. That's South Korean President Moon Jae-in as he held bilateral summits with the President and Prime Minister of Singapore. Standing in the city where exactly 1 month ago stood the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump for their historic summit, the South Korean leader carefully predicted that the June 12th summit may lead to success if North Korea implements complete denuclearization and the international community join efforts to guarantee security for the North.
영내 평화와 안정을 위해서도 공조를 강화하기로 했습니다.
Constructive dialogue is necessary in order to achieve peace and stability in the peninsula.
Such remarks come amid a possible gap between North Korea and the U.S. on how to move ahead with the denuclearization process, which became more apparent following U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's latest trip to Pyongyang. According to the South Korean leader's chief press secretary, President Moon also noted although working-level negotiations may take time, now is a better time than ever to finally rid North Korea of its nuclear mission. The president also made note of what North Korea is demanding in return for its denuclearization measures, not the removal of sanctions or economic compensation, but rather the end of hostilities and trust. Analysts say it's the facilitator or the negotiator in action as it tries to move forward the U.S.-North Korea denuclearization process as it appears to have hit a stall. Traveling with the South Korean president, MoonJae-in, Arirang News, Singapore.
And staying with that story, President Moon also attended the South Korea-Singapore Business Forum as well as the dinner banquet hosted by the Singaporean president on Thursday. Now, the focus was on cultivating a close friendship between the two countries. Our Hwang Ho-jun tells us more.
A friendship that is solid as gold and sweet as a fragrant orchid. That is how President Moon described the close friendship between Seoul and Singapore during a state banquet hosted by the Singaporean President Halimah Yacob.
저는 오늘 이 난초를 통해서 싱가포르와 한국 간에 금난지교가 맺어졌다고 생각합니다.
It was a nod to an earlier event that President Moon and his wife, First Lady Kim Jong-suk, attended at the Singapore Botanic Gardens, where a newly cultured orchid was named after the first couple. On Thursday afternoon, in front of about 300 business leaders from both countries gathered at Singapore's Shangri-La Hotel, President Moon also called for Singapore's active support for his new southern policy, especially with Singapore chairing the 2018 ASEAN Summit. It was November last year when the South Korean president first introduced his vision to, quote, dramatically strengthen Seoul's cooperation with ASEAN nations by focusing on the 3 Ps: people-centered exchanges, mutual prosperity, and peace. President Moon highlighted 3 ways to bring about future-oriented cooperation between the two countries. He first said Korea and Singapore will secure future growth engines together in response to the 4th Industrial Revolution, especially by promoting the active participation of small businesses and innovative startups in the process.
싱가포르의 혁신 역량과 자본력에 한국의 세계적인 정보통신 기술이 결합하면 큰 시너지 효과를 만들어낼 수 있을 것입니다.
The president also emphasized that bilateral economic cooperation must work effectively to benefit the people of both countries, and that South Korea and Singapore must work together to prevent the spread of protectionism, noting that the foundation for the two countries' economic growth has been free trade and openness. President MoonJae-in ended his speech with the expression Majula Singapura, Malay for onward Singapore. Even during the business forum, President Moon asked again for Singapore's continued support for establishing lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. He stressed if South Korea and Singapore go onward, or Majula together, not only Korea but the entire ASEAN will enjoy peace and co-prosperity. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News, Singapore.
U.S. President Donald Trump has hailed the NATO summit as a success, saying members were committed to paying more for the alliance's defense. But some allies cast doubt over his claims. And for more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Doaram at the News Center. A bombastic and to the two-day summit in Brussels, Aram.
That's right, Semin. The past 2 days saw President Trump give a mixture of jibes and praise towards NATO members. But in the end, he did leave satisfied. Trump told a press conference on Thursday that all NATO members agreed to increase their defense spending after he told them he was, quote, extremely unhappy. The day before, he suggested NATO allies double their military spending to 4% of their GDP, saying the US was paying that much. However, NATO figures show America spent 3.5% this year. Trump has repeatedly threatened to pull the US out of NATO if burden sharing was not improved. When asked if that threat still stands, President Trump said he could, but no longer saw the need.
I think I probably can, but that's unnecessary, and the people have stepped up today like they've never stepped up before. And remember the word, $33 billion more they're paying. And you'll hear that from the Secretary General in a little while. He thanked me, actually.
However, some NATO members cast doubt on Trump's claims that they had pledged to, quote, substantially raise their defense budgets. They said they simply agreed to a 2014 deal to spend 2% of their GDP by the year 2024. However, NATO's chief, Jens Stoltenberg, did note that President Trump's rhetoric did create a sense of urgency. Meanwhile, President Trump is now in the United Kingdom for a 4-day visit. He and his wife Melania met British Prime Minister Theresa May for a black-tie dinner with business leaders at Blenheim Palace in London. During that dinner, they reaffirmed their strong alliance and vowed to jointly fight against terrorism as well as Russian aggression. They also touched upon post-Brexit trade. The President and First Lady are also slated to meet the Queen on Friday in Windsor. Trump's visit comes amid fierce protests against the US leader, which includes a blimp portraying him as a big baby. President Trump said he feels fine about the protests, adding many Britons like him a lot. But he later told the Sun newspaper that he felt unwelcome in London. China's Commerce Ministry has said it's currently not engaged in trade talks with the United States, accusing Washington of escalating a trade war between the two countries. Spokesman Gao Feng told a regular briefing Thursday that Beijing resolutely opposes what he called America's trade bullying behavior, warning that China will have no choice but to strike back. He added that China lost its trust in the US, which he said was a precondition for trade negotiations. On Tuesday, the Trump administration slapped new 10% tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports.
South Korea's National Assembly is convening a 2-week-long extraordinary session starting this Friday, bringing an end to over 40 days of inaction. Rival political parties start this morning by electing a parliamentary speaker and 2 vice speakers for the latter half of the 20th National Assembly. For the latest, we connect live to our political correspondent Kim Min-ji at the National Assembly. Min-ji, tell us more.
Simon, as you touched upon, the plenary session is underway as we speak. Now, the National Assembly is back in action after more than 6 weeks of inactivity. The latter half of the 20th National Assembly has kicked off with the electing of the Assembly Speaker and 2 vice speakers, filling in the key Assembly leadership posts that have sat vacant for over a month. As is custom, the largest party, currently the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, has put forward its candidate for Speaker. Moon Hee-sang, a 6-term lawmaker, speaker was selected as the ruling party candidate back in May, just as the term of the former speaker expired. Now, 2 vice speakers will come from the main opposition Liberty Korea Party and the minor Paramita Party. Their candidates are 5-term lawmaker Lee Ju-young and 4-term lawmaker Chu Sung-young, respectively. Now, the parliamentary speaker and vice speakers will be elected by a majority vote.
Now, Min-ji, this is just a beginning to what's more to come. And we also understand the rival political parties have got a lot on their plate for the duration of this July session alone.
That's right, Simon. Due to over a month of paralysis, they've got a stack of agenda items to work through. Next Monday, a plenary session will be held to finalize the makeup of the Parliament's 18 standing committees. Now, the ruling party will chair 8 of them, the main opposition 7, the Paramita Party 2, and the joint bloc of the Party for Democracy and Peace and the Justice Party will head up 1. They will also vote on the National Assembly Act to separate the Committee on Education, Culture, Sports, and Tourism into 2 separate ones, one in charge of education and the other the remaining affairs. Now, also on the agenda are confirmation hearings for the candidate for Commissioner General of the National Police Agency and 3 nominees for Supreme Court justices. Now, although we are back on track, and despite the fact that it was a much-needed breakthrough, there are concerns of political wrangling down the line, with rival parties expected to clash during the upcoming confirmation hearings, and not to mention the mountain of disputed bills that have to be reviewed. Back to you, Zamin.
All right, Kim Min-ji, watching day 1 of July's extraordinary session at South Korea's National Assembly. Moving on, a government commission is holding discussions to decide the country's minimum wage for next year today after the country raised the hourly pay by 16.4% this year. The 27-member panel, comprised of those representing labor, employers, and the public interest, are expected to narrow their differences. Now, the gap between the two sides is still huge, with labor representatives demanding the minimum wage be set over 10,000 won, or some $9.60, which is up over 43%. And the employers' representatives hoping to keep the minimum wage at the same level as this year, which is around $6.70 an hour. With the Moon administration's pledge to raise the hourly wage floor to at least $8.90, watchers are expecting an upward adjustment to at least $7. South Korea's import prices went up for the 6th consecutive month in June due to the weakening Korean won. The Bank of Korea says the import prices index rose 1.3% on month, recording 88.26 in June. Compared to the same period last year, the index is up near 11%, marking the biggest jump in 17 months. The local currency weakened against the U.S. dollar, recording an average of 1,092.81 last month, pushing up Korea's import prices despite a slight fall in global oil prices. Export prices edged up 0.9% on month to 85.68 on the back of rising industrial goods prices. And now to the latest on Samsung BioLogics and the accounting fraud scandal swirling around the firm. The Financial Supervisory Service says a 2015 accounting breach by the Samsung affiliate was intentional, and a biopharmaceutical firm clearly violated accounting rules. The financial regulator adds it will refer the case to the prosecution. The decision comes after a months-long review of the company's bookkeeping when it switched in 2015 to valuing its stakes in drug maker Samsung Bioepis at fair market value instead of a book value. Following the announcement, Samsung BioLogics expressed regret, adding that it had no motive to intentionally violate accounting rules. It also added that it will consider taking legal action against the ruling. As of last month, the number of North Koreans who defected to the South surpassed 30,000, and more than 600 of them started their own businesses here. And as Seoul and Pyongyang grow closer than ever before, they have the potential to play key roles in improving cross-border economic relations. Our Ko Ryun-hee tells us more.
For Chun Keum-ju, a North Korean defector-turned-entrepreneur, being busy at 6 a.m. is nothing new. Chun, who came to South Korea in 2010, owns a flower online shopping mall, and she often stops by this flower market in the morning to get the best possible merchandise for her customers.
Today I bought these flowers. In the winter, they usually cost about $15 per bundle. However, I got them for only $3 today. I think it's a good deal.
As a North Korean defector who settled in the South, she was especially interested in the recent developments in inter-Korean relations. Chun believes defectors who have found a new life by becoming entrepreneurs like herself can change the South Korean public's perception towards them and contribute in improving mutual understanding.
Some North Korean defectors who started their own businesses were successful enough to be on television. I think defectors can build a more positive image by showing the South Korean public how they strive to make a living.
For Chun, as well as many other North Korean defectors, the work of non-profit organization is crucial, such as the Bridge International. The CEO of this organization says they have an important role to play in the future when the two Koreas prepare for economic cooperation.
North Korean defectors who have their own businesses can play a big role in the future because they're the ones who know well about both Korea's market economy. Also, successful entrepreneurs can help other defectors settle into new working environments. For example, they can give advice or even hire them.
The organization also believes South Korea can utilize the defectors when expanding the trade with China.
Our company distributes dried fish and we get the products from China. I started the business in this field because I had experience communicating with Chinese traders in North Korea.
Some say it is too early to discuss economic cooperation between the two Koreas, as international sanctions against the regime are still widely in effect. However, others say to achieve lasting peace on the Korean peninsula, efforts need to sprout from all levels of society, including defectors who are setting new lives for others like them to follow. 고륜이 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning. We only had 15 days of monsoon rain this year, and that's the second shortest monsoon season on record since 1973. Now, usually we have a month-long monsoon season, so that means we'll have 15 more days with scorching temperatures. More heat and high humidity will make everyone uncomfortable all day today, while heat wave alerts are still in place. Highs in northern regions will be in the low 30s, getting up to 32 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Daegu and Gyeongju will be blistering hot at 36 degrees this afternoon. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So heat and more heat is in the forecast for much of South Korea, while the monsoonal front will drop rain on most of North Korea. The second surge of monsoon rain is expected to move across northern and western India. In parts of Sydney, the mercury could sink to below freezing on Saturday morning. Chicago will have a scorcher on Friday, but at least the humidity will be low. As for South America, most major cities look to have promising weather conditions on Friday. In Britain, thunderstorms and rain are in store, with the Met Office issuing a yellow weather warning for thunderstorms on Friday. Lastly, to Africa, Tripoli and Cairo will have a similar daily highs as Daegu here in South Korea, but the humidity is a lot higher in Daegu. And that's the weather update for now.
And that'll do it for us at the hour on Arirang News, but keep it tuned for more news updates coming up at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.